frustration, internal tension, and a possible battle for leadership inside Ferrari. Now the FIA is reviewing the fight between the two Ferrari drivers after that shocking moment in Turn 1. And the timing could not be worse for the team, because while Hamilton and Leclerc were fighting each other, George Russell was escaping at the front, which raises a very uncomfortable question for Ferrari. Did the China sprint just expose the first real crack between Hamilton and Leclerc inside the SF-26? Because if this rivalry inside the team continues, Ferrari could lose far more than just a sprint race. Subscribe now, because what happened between Hamilton and Leclerc in Shanghai might be the beginning of one of the most explosive rivalries of the entire Formula One season. The tension between Hamilton and Leclerc did not suddenly appear during that moment in Turn 1. In reality, the warning signs were already building before the sprint race even started, because the China weekend began with Ferrari looking surprisingly competitive. From the first sessions in Shanghai, the SF-26 showed something very encouraging: strong cornering balance, good tire management, and the ability to stay close to the front group. But there was also a clear limitation: straight line speed, and that weakness became very visible during sprint qualifying. While Mercedes looked extremely strong on the long Shanghai straights, Ferrari struggled to match that top-end performance. For Lewis Hamilton, that created a very specific challenge. To stay competitive, he had to maximize the car in the corners, brake later, carry more speed through the apex, and attack aggressively whenever an opportunity appeared. That aggressive approach became obvious when the sprint race started. When the lights went out in Shanghai, Hamilton reacted instantly. His launch was one of the best on the grid. Starting from 4th position, he immediately attacked the cars ahead. Within seconds, he passed Kimi Antonelli. Then he closed in on Lando Norris. And suddenly the Ferrari was fighting near the very front of the race. For a brief moment, Hamilton even challenged George Russell for the lead. It was an impressive start, the kind of opening that can completely change the direction of a sprint race. But while Hamilton was pushing forward, something else was happening behind him. Charles Leclerc was quietly gaining ground. Starting from 6th position, the Monégasque driver began to close the gap. Lap after lap, his pace looked slightly stronger, and that difference in rhythm slowly brought him closer to his teammate. At first, it did not seem like a problem. Ferrari had 2 cars near the front, both drivers pushing hard, both chasing Russell. On paper, that is exactly what a team wants. But inside Formula One, situations like that can become complicated very quickly. Because when 2 teammates have similar pace, the question of priority always appears. Who should lead the chase? Who should defend? Who should be allowed to attack? In Shanghai, Ferrari chose a very simple solution. They gave both drivers freedom to race. No team order, no instruction to hold position, just a clear message: race hard but respect each other. At first, that decision seemed reasonable. But as Leclerc continued to close the gap to Hamilton, the situation began to feel more delicate, because the 2 Ferraris were now fighting for the same piece of track. And every lap they spent battling each other was another lap where George Russell could extend his lead. Still, Ferrari did not intervene. They allowed the fight to develop naturally. And that decision led directly to the moment that shocked the entire paddock. Because once Leclerc entered DRS range behind Hamilton, it became clear that an overtake attempt was only a matter of time. By lap 8, the moment everyone inside Ferrari feared was about to happen. Charles Leclerc was now right behind Lewis Hamilton, close enough to open the DRS, close enough to attempt a move. And in Formula One, once a driver reaches that distance, the pressure instantly increases, because the next corner becomes an opportunity. The next braking zone becomes a decision. Attack or wait. Leclerc chose to attack. As the 2 Ferraris approached the long Shanghai straight, Leclerc stayed tucked behind Hamilton, using every bit of aerodynamic slipstream. The gap shrank, meter by meter, and as they arrived at the braking zone for Turn 1, Leclerc made his move. He dived to the inside, laid on the brakes, a bold, decisive attack. For a moment, it looked perfectly timed. Leclerc's Ferrari slipped alongside Hamilton's car as they entered the corner, but Hamilton did not surrender the position easily. Instead of backing out, he stayed on the outside line. 2 Ferrari cars, side by side, entering one of the fastest and most complex corner sequences on the entire circuit. Turn 1 in Shanghai is not a simple corner. It tightens as you enter. Then it continues into a long sweeping section, which means that 2 cars running wheel to wheel there is always risky. And for a few seconds, the risk became very real. Both drivers held their line. Neither one lifted. The two red cars were separated by only centimeters. One small mistake, one slight misjudgment, and the entire race for Ferrari could have ended in the gravel. But Leclerc managed to complete the move. He edged ahead, barely. The SF-26 slipped in front as they exited the corner. The overtake was done. Position changed. But the tension was far from over, because Lewis Hamilton immediately tried to fight back. On the very next lap, he attacked again, this time around the outside through the opening sequence of turns. Again, the two Ferraris were side by side. Again, the margin between them was almost nothing. And for the second time in 2 laps, Ferrari found itself holding its breath, watching two of its drivers fighting as if they were racing for different teams. The moment passed without contact, but the pressure inside the Ferrari garage was already building, because when teammates fight this hard, the consequences can be enormous. Every second they lose battling each other helps the cars ahead escape, and that is exactly what was happening. While Hamilton and Leclerc were locked in their internal duel, George Russell was slowly increasing the gap at the front. Meanwhile, something else was happening inside the cockpit of Leclerc's Ferrari. The frustration was starting to show. Over the team radio, he delivered the message that would quickly spread across the entire paddock. First, he warned the team that Hamilton was struggling with pace. Then came the line that instantly went viral. Does he know how wide these cars are or not? It was not just a complaint. It was a signal, a sign that the fight had become personal. Leclerc clearly believed Hamilton had defended too aggressively, too close, too risky, and the entire world heard that frustration in real time. Inside Ferrari, the situation suddenly became very delicate, because radio messages like that reveal something deeper. They reveal emotion, pressure, and sometimes the beginning of a rivalry inside the same team. And this is exactly why the FIA is now reviewing the battle between the two Ferraris. Not necessarily because a rule was broken, but because the maneuver itself was extremely close. Two teammates, wheel to wheel, at one of the fastest entry points on the circuit. The kind of moment that race officials always analyze carefully. But for Ferrari, the bigger issue may not be the FIA review. The bigger issue is what this fight reveals about the dynamic inside the team. Because if Hamilton and Leclerc continue pushing each other this aggressively, then the biggest threat to Ferrari this season might not come from Mercedes, or Red Bull, or McLaren. It might come from inside their own garage. But what happened after that radio message may be even more important than the fight itself. Because when the sprint race ended and both Ferrari drivers returned to the garage, the atmosphere inside the team was very different from what you normally see after a strong result. On paper, Ferrari had performed well. The SF-26 looked competitive in the corners. Both drivers had fought near the front, and the team had collected valuable points. But inside Formula One, results alone do not tell the whole story. The way those results are achieved matters just as much. An internal battle between Hamilton and Leclerc had raised a very uncomfortable question for Ferrari's leadership. Who is the real leader of this team in 2026? Because this is not a normal driver pairing. On one side, you have Lewis Hamilton, a multiple world champion, one of the most experienced drivers in the history of the sport, a driver who arrived at Ferrari with enormous expectations and global attention. On the other side, you have Charles Leclerc, the longtime Ferrari driver, the man many fans see as the future of the team, the driver who has grown inside the Ferrari system for years. Two extremely competitive personalities, two drivers who both believe they should be leading the charge. And moments like the fight in Shanghai tend to reveal exactly how delicate that balance can become. Inside the paddock, many analysts immediately began comparing the situation to other famous teammate rivalries in Formula One history. Hamilton and Rosberg at Mercedes, Vettel and Webber at Red Bull, Alonso and Hamilton back at McLaren. In each of those cases, the problem was not just speed, it was ambition. Two drivers fighting for the same status inside the same team. And if a team does not manage that rivalry carefully, things can escalate very quickly. That is exactly why Ferrari's management is now reviewing the entire situation from a sprint. Not only the on-track fight, but also the radio messages, the timing of the overtake, and the risk that the team took by allowing both drivers to race freely. During the race, the Ferrari pit wall did not issue a direct team order. They allowed Hamilton and Leclerc to battle. The logic behind that decision was simple. At that moment, Russell already had a small gap at the front. Ferrari wanted the faster driver to lead the chase. But that strategy also carried a serious risk. because if the two Ferrari cars had collided during that battle in Turn 1, the team could have lost both positions instantly. And that would have turned a strong sprint result into a complete disaster. After the race, both drivers tried to calm the situation publicly. Leclerc admitted that his radio message came from frustration during the heat of the moment. He explained that the entire weekend had already been stressful, especially because Ferrari appeared to be losing performance on the long straights compared to Mercedes. In Shanghai, that weakness becomes even more visible. The long back straight punishes any car that lacks power. Leclerc revealed that in one particular lap, he even experienced a small issue with the hybrid deployment system, which made the deficit even worse. That is why he felt the urgency to attack Hamilton quickly. If he did not pass in that moment, Russell might have escaped completely. Hamilton, on the other hand, took a more diplomatic approach in his post-race comments. Instead of focusing on the fight with his teammate, he redirected the conversation toward Ferrari's bigger challenge, closing the performance gap to Mercedes. Because while the two Ferrari drivers were battling each other, George Russell was calmly extending his advantage at the front. And that detail may be the most important lesson from a China sprint. Ferrari has the pace to fight near the front, but internal battles can easily destroy that opportunity. The championship season has only just begun. China was only the second Grand Prix weekend of the year, which means the relationship between Hamilton and Leclerc will be tested many more times. Different circuits, different strategies.